Live and rolling once again. This is Road Gang Radio, broadcasting from NOLA to Nashville. Jimmy, Lindsay, where are we?
Everywhere.
Yeah.
On the tube of you, on the eye of heart, on the book of face. We're omnipresent. We're ubiquitous. We are like everything, everywhere, all at once on Road Gang Radio, hashtag RGR. Once again, big shout out to our friends at ShadyRays.com. They've got a great lost and broken protection program. They have outstanding customer service. Most importantly, at ShadyRays.com, they've got your back, and so do Lindsay and I as you make your way down the road.
They got you.
They got you. They got your back. Good morning, Lindsay.
Good morning. I love my Shady Rays. I also love The Last Rebel, who just joined us. What a great band. I like him even more now after talking to him. Good dudes. Talking about good dudes. Speaking of good dudes, our next guest, Tony Mantor, who I've been chatting with over on the gram of Insta, as Jimmy Mack would say. I actually found Tony through a podcast and then realized he's also a musician and all these things. So he's legendary in Nashville, and very excited to welcome to the show the next guest, Tony Mantor. He's been a staple in the Nashville music scene for decades as a producer, a songwriter, a musician. He's got over 30 top 40 hits to his name, 16 of those which have landed in the top 10. He's worked alongside all kinds of big names here in Nashville. He knows this town inside and out, as do I, so we're going to talk Nashville. But beyond music, Tony has taken on a mission that's actually even more powerful. He's coupled with music. Music is powerful, coupled together. He's the host of the Why Not Me podcast, which focuses on mental health and autism awareness. He's reached over 1.5 million downloads across 99 countries with that podcast. And through his advocacy, he's helping change the way we talk about neurodiversity and inclusion, special episodes tackling everything from education to the justice system. It's very impactful, guys.
So
it's
important to me.
So important, yes, to you and me. Something we need more of in this world. So we're going to dive in, talk about the work behind the music, the mission, and the microphone. Good morning. Please make welcome to the show my new friend and yours, Tony Mantor. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for being here.
Welcome back, Tony, by the way, in regards to you and I talked together such a long time ago, and it was so good to see your name pop up again. I was so, as Teddy Roosevelt would say, delighted that you were actually going to be joining us. And I want to kind of start here because, I don't know if you and I talked about this the last time we talked in a galaxy far, far away. Autism, for me, is a very personal issue. My brother's oldest son is about as sweet and lovely a child as you can imagine, and he exists on a completely different frequency from the rest of the world. And he is going to be a handful for my brother to the day my brother shuffles off his mortal coil. And this is something very important to you. So I wanted you to kind of begin by talking about the Why Not Me podcast, how it started, which is really important, but then the shift that you made along the way, because one of the great things about podcasts is that conversation will often take us in a different direction, and we'll find out we are not where we began, but where we needed to be.
Yeah, it's quite a journey, actually. I started this knowing absolutely nothing about autism. What happened is COVID hit, because I'm in the music business here in Nashville, so I decided that I was going to do something for fun, and I was create another album. So I picked songs that I had done and performed live in the past, and then I picked some songs that friends of mine had written. And Why Not Me came to me, and it was about never giving up on your dreams, which is something that I focused on all my social media. Never give up, never give up. So I did that, and then my promoters in New York, Nashville, LA, London, all told me this song is so positive it has to be released. I told them I'm not getting back on the road. I'm not doing this to get out there and perform. I'm just doing it for the fun of it. So long story short, we did release it, and then I decided that we had to do something other than just release a song. So I made a video that paid tribute to our first responders. And that went over really big. And then after everything was done, a couple of months later, I had this lady call me up and ask me if I could do something for them. And she was a speech therapist for autistic children. So I decided to do something. I re-recorded Why Not Me in a more pop version. And then I did a video called Why Not Me Nashville. And it had all the autistic community and special needs community in Nashville come on and do the video. from there, I started the podcast, and it just continued to grow. It's something I thought would last maybe a few months. I figured it was going to be too niche, and it just continued to grow and grow and grow. And then all of a sudden, I'm finding myself in 100 countries and over 2,300 cities around the world, and people reaching out to me and telling me their stories from all over the world. And then last November, I had a lady call me up and ask me if I'd consider doing something on April, which is Autism Awareness Month, for autism and the legal system, and I did not know that there was an issue. And it turned out there's quite an issue, actually. So I decided that I would do that, and then in doing that, I got introduced to a lady that has an organization for mental health community, and asked me if I would do something for that in May, because May's Mental Health Awareness Month. So it took me 5 months to put together 61 straight episodes from April 1st to May 31st. And in that process, I learned so much more about mental health, ADHD, bipolar, anxiety, schizophrenia. And every story I heard, I said, man, this needs to be told. So I decided June 1st to expand and rebrand and call it instead of Why Not Me the World, Embracing Autism, I changed it to Why Not Me, Embracing Autism and Mental Health Worldwide. And now I give a platform for anybody that wants to come on that's under that mental health umbrella. And it's continued to grow. And now I'm close to 3 million downloads.
Wow. It's incredible. Actually, how your podcast I kind of found, and it sparked an interest. I'm curious have you heard of the telepathy tapes?
I have.
So have you listened to it?
I haven't had a chance to listen, no.
Okay, so I found it maybe last year and listened to it, and it sort of blew my mind. I don't know what it necessarily even sparked me to listen to it. A friend shared it with me. It's certainly one of those things where people are sharing it, and that's how it's caught on. And actually, it's full on blown up. She's a documentary filmmaker who made it. But I listened to the telepathy tapes, and why I was so inspired, encouraged, also saddened by it, but all the emotions, Tony, is because it's out there, and I don't necessarily need to go deep into that podcast, because they're talking about how children or nonverbal children with autism are connecting on a whole different level, perhaps telepathically. And if you think about it, people can instantly hear that and be like, "Oh, that's woo, that's crazy." But if you think about it, if you lose your eyesight, your hearing is they say is super enhanced, or vice versa. When you lose any sort of one sense, the others are enhanced. So this would make sense if you're nonverbal, that you would have to find other ways to communicate. It makes sense. But what stood out to me, Tony, is all these people who have been silenced, whether it's the scientists, the doctors, the teachers that have worked with these children from autism, that have been felt like they couldn't speak up because something felt maybe too out there, but they saw things that were happening that was a common thread throughout all these autistic children and humans in general. And now people are just being more vocal and speaking up, which is something you're doing as well in your podcast. So my question to you through all that is, what has been the most intriguing, interesting, or thing that blew your mind that you've learned about both autism, but just people with them, that's sort of the commonality and this connection piece? Because it's a good reminder, we are all humans, we are all in this together, and we have to support each other, every single one of us. So what's the biggest thing you've learned, or that sort of kind of blew your mind throughout this journey where you've dug into autism?
Well, it's amazing, actually, because when I first started this, like I said, I knew absolutely nothing about autism. I had a friend of mine that had an autistic nephew, but he never talked about it. The more I talked with people that had an autistic child, or they found out they was autistic later in life, was the ways they find that we don't think about to survive. Because, like you said, there's a lot of kids that are nonverbal, but they find ways to communicate. They've got iPads now. They've got all these different things. But just the resiliency. I mean, I had one guy come on that he said that his son normally had, like, when he would have a meltdown, it would last 20, 30 minutes, and then it'd be over. And then one day he had the ultimate meltdown. It lasted 4 hours, and it looked like a tornado had gone through his house. And the one thing that I find within the autistic community is unemployment is high, but these people are just as smart as you and I, or smarter than you and I lots of times.
Yeah.
They have ways of doing things. It's just the way that they find to move forward no matter what happens. The family finds a way to make it work. And they have challenges that you and I could never, ever begin to understand because we're not part of it. But the way they find their way through those challenges in order to take and survive and keep moving forward is very inspiring and very impressive. So there's not any one thing that I can say just stands out. It's the group as a whole that find a way that has this stigma attached to it. And stigma is nothing more. I try and change that word now when I talk with people and don't use the word stigma. I try and use the word perception, because we in the world of non-autistic people, we have a way that we look at things, and sometimes, and most always, we will look at things and we'll have our perception of what we think it is, and it is so far from reality of what it truly is. Yeah. So I think that's probably one of the biggest things that I've learned. And the beauty of it, the more I've learned, the more I look at things completely different than I ever did before I started this thing. Because when I first started this podcast, I was going like, do I want to do a podcast about autism?
I'm so glad you did. I'm so glad you did, Tony. I'm just going to, before you even go any further, I'm so thrilled that you did. We'll get into that in a second why, but go on, please. Please.
Well, the reason why I asked that to myself was we look at ads on TV, we see St. Jude's, we see all these other things that kind of grab our hearts and pull our heartstrings. But the one thing that I thought about autism that wasn't happening is that autistic people and anyone dealing with any mental health issues, they look just like you and I do. You know, we look at them and we don't look at them like we would if we saw a child with no hair and going through chemo and all that. But they still have challenges that they have to deal with. But because they look, quote, normal, we don't let ourselves go there that they need the help. So I really believed that this story that people had to tell just needed to be heard. So I just went at it, and now it's grown, and it continues to grow.
I want to give people a sense of the breadth of Tony's work. And by the way, this is, I mean, if you only listen to the last 5 episodes, you will get a sense of the breadth of all of this. We actually go from a police officer who has become an advocate. By the way, Janet Hayes, whose work I'm very familiar with, we're down here in the New Orleans area. Her Healing Minds NOLA journey to mental health, to reform the mental health system over in the city of New Orleans. The discussion of the international impact of it with Danielle Terrell. And like I said, I can go on for a while here. There's a wonderful episode not too long ago in June with Melody, which was extraordinary. Like I said, it's not just the same story on a different day. This is an attempt to create a mosaic of neurodivergence and autism and to show the different challenges that people face, because unlike a child with cancer, which, by the way, is a devastating thing, there are certain patterns those events follow in regards to there are systems in place to deal with it. Each child, each adult that deals with this and the caretakers they have, or the need and the depth of their caretaking, each presents a unique problem. And so in many ways, Tony, it's almost like and for many people with autism, the world reinvents each time anew with each podcast you do, correct?
Yeah, the beauty of this podcast is before I started it, I went on to several different sites and I looked at, and they have rankings of their autism podcasts and all that. And I listened to some of the top podcasts out there. And when I couldn't listen to all of them all the way through. And the reason why was because they were throwing out acronyms that I knew nothing about. They were throwing out all these medical situations and all these stoic, clean procedures that they do, and I'm going, this is scary. And I felt if I just found out that I have a child that's autistic, I listen to this podcast, I'm going to be more afraid than I've ever been because I know nothing about autism and I know nothing about what my child is going through, and what they're talking about is very, very scary. So what I did with my podcast, I went from the level of knowing absolutely nothing and asking the questions that I wanted to know. So it's like, oh, you've got an autistic child. How did you find out? You know, and then when you did find out, how did you feel? What was your next steps? I made it so that a person that knows absolutely nothing about autism could follow that podcast and what that person is saying and get some grasp of what their daily life looks like. And then I felt like if someone that just found out they have an autistic child, or they've known for a while they have an autistic child, listen to someone on what they do, maybe they do something a little bit different, than they go, I haven't thought about that. Maybe I'll try it. So it was about information, getting it across in such a way that anyone, no matter where they are in life, could understand it and follow it, and hopefully get a better understanding for what people go through.
I love that you said, asking the parents too, how did you feel about it? Because that, it's a whole family that's affected. Maybe that's the wrong word, but affected by this. And so, being able to check in with the parents, the other siblings, because that's another thing. I have a niece with special needs, and we have to check in with the older sister a lot because she, everyone's like, oh, the older one's okay. She's got it all together, so she's fine. But that's not always the case. Everybody wants to be seen and heard. So really, Tony, what I think it comes down to, and I realized this when our daughter's adopted. So when we were going through the adoption process, I had to go to all these panels. And what I started to realize is every story, every situation is completely different. Everybody has their own little, different pieces behind it. And so the storytelling piece and sharing your stories and experiences is so important, back to your word perspective. So, to shift here, or to really bring it full circle, I guess, because you've had a long, successful career in music in Nashville. How do you feel like your experience in music helped prepare you for the storytelling aspect of podcasting and sharing all these stories of people? Or were you able to kind of marry those worlds through that?
Well, actually, I truly believe that my music history helped expedite this whole thing, because over the last 30 years or so, I've been producing and working with a lot of stars and a lot of stars' kids and all that, and I've promoted these people all around the world. So the nice part about this is that when I decided to start this podcast, everybody automatically thought it was going to be a music podcast. And that was my plans at first was, well, at some point I've got to do a music podcast, which I have done. I started a year ago. But now this podcast, to me, when I started about autism, I called all my friends and promoters and everybody I'd worked with in the country and in different countries around the world, and I said, hey, I'm going to start this podcast. I think it can be very impactful. I think it can help a lot of people. I think it can bring a lot of the things that people have as misconceptions about autism to light, and hopefully give a better understanding, because I feel that the biggest word that all these companies and corporations and charities have lack in their definition of autism is understanding. They have autism awareness, they have autism acceptance, but you can be aware of something and know that it's there. You can accept that it's there, but until you understand what is there, you don't really have a full grasp. So I felt that we needed to bring a better understanding all around the world, because the one thing that everybody in the world has in common is that everything is the same when it comes to autism or mental health or any type of thing like that. It's just different countries and how they approach it. But the things that they go through are very similar. no matter whether they're in London, England, or New York City. So I used every contact that I could to help promote what I was doing. So I wound up doing interviews all around the world at radio stations, BBC, print here in the U.S. and England, all over to help promote this. And because I was in the music business, yes, it did help tremendously in me being able to get the word out there on what I was doing. And people, once they heard it and heard a few of the episodes, started buying into what I was doing. And they said, yeah, how can we help? And it's continued to grow ever since.
I just want to say something. Two things, Tony. The first of which I think you'll get, and our listeners need to spend the time over on Why Not Me to actually figure out if they feel the same way. Donna Buckley, Sheriff Donna Buckley, is a badass, first of all. I just want to kind of make that really clear. The second thing is, and I bring up Donna, but I bring up every single person you talk about the idea of awareness. Listening is also really key here. And what I find is, despite that you are a man of very strong convictions and very passionate opinions, you really do allow the podcast to give these folks a platform, that you only intervene as an interviewer when it's time to go in another direction, or when the guest has kind of not exhausted the point but has brought the thing to a nice button. So much of what you do on this podcast is really giving these folks a platform while still being incredibly engaged. The active listening that you engage in, that's part of the process here, because being aware is being a listener, right?
Yeah. The ultimate compliment I got one time was a person told me that listening to my podcast, they felt like they was in a restaurant kind of eavesdropping to the conversation at the next table.
That's the best, by the way. We've actually had that happen. We've had podcasting guests on the show where I've actually stopped asking questions because I realized, I'm the one actually interviewing the guest right now. And there have been a couple of times with you talking where I looked at Lindsay and said, wait, I got to ask a question. I thought I was listening to the podcast again. But that really is the key. It's really creating that parasocial relationship with the listener of the podcast, and you have to almost kind of sit in their chair and listen for them and give them an opportunity to think about, what would the person at the next table want me to ask? Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I go from I continually say that it's the big unknown. It's the big black hole. People don't understand what's going on. So if they don't understand, how do we make them understand? How do we get them the information? The only way to get the information to the listener is to have them hear the answers to the questions that most people want to hear. So I try and make the flow go in such a way we tell their story, but they get the important part across on what people need to know when they're talking about someone that may be autistic, or someone that's going through anxiety or schizophrenia or whatever the topic may be. But you bring up Donna Buckley. I mean, she's great in what she does, and she's been in the last couple of months. But the interesting part about my podcast that I get from different people is the response. As you know, whether you're on radio or podcast, it's not an instant gratification. You're not going to have people calling you, "Oh, you are the best. You're the best." And one of the coolest things, you asked one of the things that I learned or something like this. One of the coolest things that ever happened to me in the last couple of years was either late November or early December. I had this lady send me a message on Instagram, and she was from Bulgaria. She says, I have an autistic son. I moved to Yugoslavia. I moved back to Bulgaria. I moved to Prague. I moved back to Bulgaria. I moved to another couple of countries. I moved back to Bulgaria. Then I found out that Belgium actually was a better country for an autistic child. So I moved with my autistic son and my niece. We left our family. We moved to Belgium, and your podcast gave us the strength to do it.
Wow. And that's
it doesn't get better than that.
It doesn't, Tony, and that's the ripple effect when we know. I mean, you're doing something that lights you up. It's combining all your strengths. It gives you it it nurtures your passion, and then it gives you purpose. And as I keep saying, that's the holy grail here in the world. So just kudos, I want to say to you for doing not only what you love and being in Nashville long enough to be like, it's not just about me. I've been given these talents or these things you're interested in. Okay, I want to do a lightning round with you. A couple quick questions for you, if you're okay. You ready, Tony?
Sure.
Okay. As far as Nashville goes, most underrated Nashville venue to catch live music.
Oh,
Or
wow.
do you go hear live music anymore? Because I haven't been, and I'm trying to get inspired. I asked because I'm trying to get inspired to get back out and hear live music.
I don't go to Nashville unless I absolutely have to because of the traffic and everybody's moved in so much. I mean, I do, but it's like there are so many places out there that are really good. I would just, there's so many people go down on Broadway, but I would, you can go out into like 42nd, 43rd Street, and there's some places out there that have music and everything. That's the great thing about Nashville. No matter where you go, you're going to hear some music. It's just whether you want to go into the hustle and bustle or if you want to go out and just be on the fringe a little bit and do it that way. So I can't really say that there's any one that sticks out because there's just so many that does it.
Well, I'll meet you on the fringe because I hear you. The idea of going down to Broadway makes me want to pull my toenails out. Okay. So one song that you wish you would have produced or written.
Oh, man. One song. There are just so many. I think I would just pick Bobby Braddock is a friend of mine, and he's written so many prolific songs. Just pick one. I mean, he's just done so many. I mean, from He Stopped Loving Her Today to the what's that one what he did with Toby Keith? Any one of those are just awesome songs, and I would have just loved to have any one of those.
Yep. Well, that tells me all I need to know about your. I mean, Braddock is a legend. So, okay. Let's see, a go-to snack or drink or something you have when in songwriting mode or when producing, when you're in studio working mode.
My go-to drink is kind of bland. I just find some flavor, sugar-free flavorings that either have stevia or whatever, and drop it in water, and that's what I do.
That's not bad.
I have a problem with that.
Boring.
No, it's not. It's good.
Allows you to stay hydrated and focused, by the way. Guys, you got to...
probably had a different answer 30 years ago, if I had to guess, as do we all.
No, actually, I've been that way pretty much my whole life.
By the way...
Been boring my whole life.
30 years ago, I would have been having an iced coffee just as well, Tony. 31 years ago, it might have been a different story. WhyNotMe.world is where you should go. TonyMantor.com is where you should go. You can find him on the Book of Face at Tony Mantor and on the Gram of Instant at Tony Mantor, where Lindsay and him started a really great friendship. I am glad we can continue it today, you and I. Tony, it is so good to have you back. There is so much more to talk about in regards to this project. It sounds like a passion, both in the listening to it on the podcast and the talking to you about it now. Remind me to talk to you about the DA of New Orleans and how a relationship between my brother and him over autism changed both their lives. Okay?
Yes, absolutely. They need to come on my podcast and talk about it.
Oh, I love that idea.
I will take care of that for you. Tony Mantor, by the way, friend of the show and a continuing great conversation. Thank you, Mr. T.
Thank you, Tony.
Yes. Yeah, thanks so much. I appreciate it.
Guys, we're going to come back on the other side of this break. By the way, phone lines will be open. And Lindsay, I want to tell you something. People are talking bad about us.
Yay! That's how you know it's working.
It is. I mean, it's totally working, dude. It involved a late night phone call last night. I got to tell you, a friend of the show called me and said, "You're not going to believe who's talking about you."
If they're not talking about you, they're not talking about you.